Hi, good evening, people. How are you? Although it's our day three, we are almost in the middle of our internship. I'm hoping you guys are working on your projects and the presentation part. Uh, all the best for that. And I want Sarah to straight away pitch in. Over to you.
Okay, great. Great. Thank you so much, Obama. I think while people are continuing joining in, we'll just, let them continue joining in, I guess.
Yes.
Um, I am just gonna. Okay, let's do a quick recap. What did we learn in the previous session? What did we cover in the previous session? Yikes, that me. What did we cover up in the previous session? Yes, Iram, peer pressure. We did a lot of things in the previous session, so I'm hoping for a lot more answers. Mm, mm, mm. Types of peer pressure. Okay, Iram. What else did we cover? Social psychology, comparison culture, cyberbullying, decision making. Right, interesting. And if I was to ask you all, do you remember anything specific which stayed with you in the previous session? What was something which related to you?
Someone wrote toxic culture.
Okay, all right. Okay, so guys, I also want to do a quick follow up. Key, we had discussed about literature review in the previous session, so I'm hoping you all have started working with it, right? Can I get some responses in the chat box if you have started working with it? Wow, Iram, that's very impressive. Sanvi, very good. Anaga, Mannat, nice, excellent. ठीक है. So what we'll do is we'll do our session today, and in the last 5-7 minutes, I'll just talk about the next step. Okay? All right, great. Today we are going to be covering up about one second. Thanks. Mm. Going to be talking about neurocognition, right? And we've had a lot of like smaller discussions about it in bits and pieces here and there because it's a part of sort of, of almost every single thing that we do, right? So today we're going to learn about the teenage brain and about neurocognition. Okay, so we'll be understanding how the teenage brain works, how we think, we feel, and behave differently from adults. We'll learn to recognize mental health concerns in adolescents. We'll explore a little bit, slight touching here and there of body image, self esteem, and identity formation. And we'll do a lot of activities as well, right? And then we'll do neurodiversity, slight focus on neurodiversity on ADHD and autism. And then we'll have challenging common myths and stereotypes about teenagers with reference to neurodiversity. Okay? All right. Now, if you could describe teenagers in one word, what would it be? Chaos, chaotic, transition, interesting, cranky, confused, complicated, confusing, right? It's a situation and a phase which is very overwhelming because we are bombarded by new changes in our body, in our thinking, in our social connections, in our definition of friendships and love, etc., etc., and our identity with reference to our family as well, right? It's in this age that we start discovering who we are outside of our family. So we want to make a lot more decisions on our own. We want to understand a lot more, we want to have a lot more autonomy in what we're doing, right? So our brain is developing quite rapidly, which is why things feel overwhelming. That brings us to neurocognition. Neurocognition refers to how the brain processes information. Okay? Essentially, if I was to simplify it, if my brain is behaving a particular way, why is it behaving a particular way? If the parts of my brain are collaborating and working together, why are they working together? What is the purpose of my brain? These are questions that neurocognition tries to answer. Now, in the previous session, we had talked about one angle of neuroplasticity, right? Not in the previous session, in the first session, I think, but we had talked about how neuroplasticity is the remarkable lifelong ability of the nervous system to adapt. Okay. Now, we've talked, there is this entire terminology called rehabilitation. Now, rehabilitation here could mean multiple things. Okay. Here, it could mean rehabilitation from drug addiction or substance addiction. It could also mean that you've had an accident or you've had a traumatic brain injury or something like that, and people are trying to, people, I mean professionals in the field, are trying to help you get back to society. Correct? Like, help you function on your own again. Right? Now, rehabilitation would not be possible without neuroplasticity. If our brain was rigid, if our brain was stuck in that one particular way and unchangeable, we would not be able to reorganize our structures and recreate our definitions of society, right? So, what we'll be starting off with, very simple, is memorizing the brain. Okay, now this is the one of the most simplistic videos I could get, but it is important for us to understand the parts of the brain before we learn about more information pertaining to the teenage brain. Okay, so let's watch this video. Please tell me if you can hear the audio. Oops, 1 second.
Parts of your brain. I'm going to show you how, and
Is it audible? Yes, excellent, great. So we got it figured out then. Let me just turn on some captions. Okay.
want to learn all the major parts of your brain? I'm going to show you how, and all you need are your hands. Stretch out your hands in front of you. See how the skin on this side of your hands is darker than on the other side? That's just like the outer layer of the brain, called the cortex, or the gray matter. The outside of the brain is darker than the inside because it's lined with neuron cell bodies. Cell bodies are also called soma. Cell bodies keep the neuron healthy and functioning. The muscles inside your hands represent the white matter of your brain. White matter is made up of neuron axons. Axons carry information from one neuron to another, but it's important to remember that two neurons never really touch. If you make a fist with your hands, you can form a shape that's similar to your brain's. This is how human brains are able to squeeze so much gray matter cortex into the small space within your skull. Now take your hands, cross your wrists, and make the back of your hands touch each other. This will help you remember that the left hemisphere of your brain controls the right side of your body, while the right hemisphere of your brain controls the left side of your body. Look closer at your hands. The area where they touch represents the corpus callosum. The corpus callosum is a bundle of nerves that connect the two hemispheres of the brain and help them to communicate with each other. I like to think of it as the Golden Gate Bridge of the brain. Your wrists represent the brainstem. The brainstem sits at the very bottom of your brain. It's the most basic part of your brain and regulates important life functions like breathing, your heart rate, sleeping, eating, and more. This is also where signals from the right side of your body cross over to the left brain, and where signals from the left side of your body cross over to your right brain. Your arms represent the spinal cord. The spinal cord extends down your back. It sends and receives information from the rest of your body. Let's focus on the left hemisphere. Your front fingers represent your frontal lobe. If you remember front fingers frontal lobe, you'll be able to remember that this is the part of your brain responsible for complex and abstract thought. It sits right behind your forehead, and it's the most advanced part of your brain. The frontal lobe helps you to make plans, imagine possible futures, and helps you to control your emotions. It doesn't finish developing until your mid-20s, which is why a lot of kids and teenagers can sometimes do impulsive things. If you extend your index and middle finger, you'll see the part of your hand that represents the parietal lobe. The parietal lobe integrates all the sensory information in your body. Your sense of space, navigation, and touch all get relayed here. But your brain doesn't prioritize each part of your body equally. Take a look at this homunculus map of the primary motor cortex of the brain. You'll notice that the brain prioritizes information from your hands and face. Now look at the back of your hands. You'll notice they look like eyes. This will help you to remember the occipital lobe, the area responsible for your visual information, and how it's located in the back of your brain. Have you ever hit the back of your head and seen stars? It's because you hit your occipital lobe. Take a look at your thumb. See how it can lift away from the rest of your fist, but remain attached to your hand? That's similar to the temporal lobe. The back of the temporal lobe is connected to the parietal and occipital lobes, but the front section can be lifted away from the rest of the brain. The temporal lobe is responsible for understanding sounds and speech. Here's how I remember this. The thumb looks like a temporal lobe, which is important for talking. If we take a closer look at the temporal lobe, we'll find the limbic system. The limbic system is responsible for emotions, learning, and memory. Inside, you'll find the amygdala, an almond-shaped structure which is located just below where your thumbnail is. The amygdala is responsible for basic emotions. Further inside your thumb is the hippocampus. It's sort of where the bone is in this part of your thumb. The hippocampus is responsible for learning and memory. That's it. Now you've got a portable model of the brain that you can take with you and use whenever you need it. Recreate it with your own hands a few times and customize your model by making your own mnemonics. What questions do you have about the brain? Let me know in the
ठीक है. So, tell me, what did you all learn about the brain? This is a very simple video, okay? So it is not, I mean, there are a lot more different parts of the brain, but I am keeping it simple since this is probably your first time interacting and understanding more about the brain. Um, the anterior cingulate cortex is the part which surrounds the callosum. It's quite easier that way, yes. And it is the connection between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. So it connects um, the feeling part and the thinking part, right? So that is anterior cingulate cortex. Learning about is not hard. ठीक है, excellent. If you all are so sure that learning about the brain is not hard, I will ask you some questions. You tell me the answer. ठीक है? Okay, which part of the brain is associated with feelings? Emotional regulation. Which part of the brain is associated with emotional regulation? Temporal lobe. Excellent. Yes. Almond. Correct. Amygdala. What about balance? Which part of the brain is associated with balance? Frontal lobe. Okay. And there is a specific part. Can someone tell me that? The cerebellum. Yes, Tisha. Excellent. Okay. Which part is associated with abstract thinking and functioning? Abstract thinking, decision making, etc. Frontal lobe. Correct. So which part is associated with emotions? What had you all said? Amygdala, right. So amygdala is in which part of the brain? Temporal lobes. Excellent. Very good. Left side, left hemisphere controls which part of the body? Right side. So right will control. Does anyone know what it's called? This terminology is called what? Starts from B. Does anyone know what this bidiurnal something? No. It's basically bilateralization or lateralization basically. ठीक है? When we are talking about the both the hemispheres, and we're saying that the left side controls the right part of the body and the right side controls the left part of the body, we're saying that is called bilateralization. ठीक है? Okay. Right. Now, let's talk about when we are discussing about the teenage brain, we talked about how there are so many things which are very overwhelming and the brain is constantly overloaded with so many emotions and so many decision making, etc., right? So essentially we are having a connection between the limbic system, which is the feeling part, and the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking part. Okay, so let's take a couple of examples. Let's say a friend excludes you from a group chat. In this situation, what would your emotional brain want to do? Yes, Madhav. Confront him, be sad, okay. Confusion, yes. Accept it. Ignore them. Request them to take us back. Definitely overthinking. Ask him, communicate after some silence, take some time. Right. So here we're noticing that this is a part focusing on our emotions and our feelings more than the rational part of our brain would, which is more thinking basis, right? So if I was to ask you what would the thinking part suggest, you would say stuff like, the thinking part would say, don't bother too much about it, find other friends to hang out with, don't bother, don't be too upset about it, these things happen. So your thinking part would uh, rationalize what's happening, right? Essentially, the corpus callosum, where we are discussing about one second. The corpus callosum and the parts which connect the hemispheres and connect the different parts of our brain, including the gray matter and white matter, these are associated with helping us think in a more balanced manner. Our actions cannot always be only emotional and cannot always be only rational. We as human beings exist in a spectrum, right? We need to keep being able to understand at what situations do we need to think emotionally and what situations do we think need to think rationally, right? So let's talk about the second situation. You fail an important test. What would your emotional brain want to do? Okay. Shocked, panic, feel guilty, sad, overthink. Okay. Get upset. What would the thinking part do? Self degradation. Encourage myself to do better next time. Work hard. What would the thinking part do? Work hard, motivation, motivate, focus on consistency. But then again, right, we need to work from a part of balance. So essentially, teenage is a very important time to sort of figure out a balance between, okay, I'm feeling these emotions about my behavior in this test. I failed this important test and I feel really bad about it. But I'll continue working harder for other things in my life. I'll give it more effort the next time around, right? Yes, teenagers are explorers. Very good, Prithvi. Madhav, to answer your question, why does our feelings and emotions develops in teenage? That is just how the brain functions, Madhav. I mean, um, actually, what happens is when we are in our teenage, we are developing a lot more rapidly because we are understanding our own identity and learning to make associations outside of family and outside of our care bubbles, right? Which is why we learn more about emotions, we learn more about regulating them, etc., after we hit the ages of puberty, right? So that is where massive development happens in the socio emotional components of our development. Yeah. Okay. Now, ठीक है. Please tell me. I want to hear from you all, right? What are some mental health concerns in teenagers? Depression, okay. Anxiety. Aradhya, it's not like it doesn't happen in childhood, but look at it this way, right? When we are children, most of what we know about our society and our feelings and our behaviors are things that we learn from others by mimicking them or by observing them and then doing it, right? But once we grow up and once we reach puberty, because our brain is developing faster, we are deciding our own feelings. We're thinking about our own emotions from a more holistic perspective, which is why we have time and we have that energy in our brain to develop feelings and emotions in a more and understand them better, right? Okay, substance abuse, stress, etc., etc. So yeah, many mental health concerns in teenagers right now. What are some protective factors? Emotional regulation, emotional unawareness, emotional suppression. One second. Madhav, how is emotional regulation a mental health concern? While Madhav answers that, can someone tell me what are some protective factors? What are some protective factors? Supportive environment. Yes, Mannat, very good. So, what would a supportive environment include? Anaga, how is emotional suppression a protective factor? Believe in yourself. Family and friends. Yes. Socializing, mindfulness, supportive individuals, good people, supporting family. Very good. What about individual factors? What about things like um, I'm never going to give up attitude? Or things like, mental strength, resilience, etc. Exactly, right? So these are not things which we get from others. When someone can be aware of what they help. Yes, Madhav. So that's a protective factor, not a mental health concern. Internal motivation, yes. Very good, Ananya. Correct. So now here is our first activity for today. We're going to make a stress bucket. Okay? I wanted to draw a bucket, and वो bucket में you need to write out the things which stress you out. वो exams हो, वो friendships conflicts हो, वो family issues हो, right? So you take a rough sheet, you draw a bucket. Bucket would be wow, like this. Okay? And here I would like you to write down what are the things that stress you. Okay? Once you've written down these things which stress you, I want you to write down what are some things which help relieve that stress, what reduce that stress. Okay? Now, there is no way for me to see if you're doing the activity, but I hope and only concern is height. Okay. I hope and I really encourage you all to do this activity because it's a very good way of understanding what are your stresses and what are your protective factors. Okay? So now it is 7:25. I'll give you all 3-4 minutes. Okay? I will follow up at 7:28 p.m. to see अगर हो गया है या नहीं. So you draw a bucket and you write down the things within the bucket which stress you out, and outside the bucket are things which protect you, which take care of you, and which help you. One. I'm not saying anything, Tusha, so you can't hear me because I'm not saying anything. I would like you all to do the bucket drawing, okay? And it is 7:26 p.m. Concerns. Prithvi, I would encourage you to not share this year. Okay? This is more of a personal exercise for you to work on yourself. Okay? Now, what I like the aim with this exercise is for you to understand that there are things which stress you out for sure, but there are also ways to protect yourself, and these are your protective factors, and these are the ways that you build resilience. Right? So, music, sleep, mindfulness, exercising, talking to your friends, socializing, spending time with your family, working on a particular hobby or two. All of these are ways to help reduce the stress you're experiencing, right? So, stress भी जो होता है वो temporary होता है. It's not permanent, right? It's temporary, and because it's temporary, it means we can actually work with relieving it also. It's not there to stay for the longer run. Okay? ठीक है. What's the time? Okay. ठीक है. Cool. Um, Please continue engaging in this activity and remember that things which stress you out will constantly keep changing and things which protect you will also constantly keep changing. ठीक है? So keep updating your stress bucket. But most importantly, remember that this is a way for you to understand that Lavansh, it is not a comparative quantitative thing. A lot of people have more stress factors than protecting factors. What matters is can I invest more time, energy, and more effort into the protecting factors so that I'm able to deal with the stressful factors better. right? There'll always be people who have like five protecting factors and 10 stressors, right? So we're not saying ki, acha, for every stressor you need to have one protective factor. We're saying for every stressor, for every stress you're experiencing, you need to have a little bit of protection, which will help you feel better, which will help you regulate your emotions, right? So it's not a quantity based thing. Please don't confuse yourself with that. Okay. Sometimes people are in stress, but they don't realize that. Yes, Gia, it can happen. A lot of people reach this phase wherein they, are overworked and they sort of refuse to accept that they're overworked, or they refuse to accept they are in denial about the fact that they are stressed out, right? So that is basically what happens as well. Okay. Okay. So let's move to body image. What is body image? How our body appears to us, perception about our physiological appearance, how our body looks aesthetically. Okay. So does everyone have a body image? Does everyone have a body image? Okay. And does everyone have a body image issue? So what is, one second, Mannat, let's not make generalization. Not majority of people don't have body image issues. We cannot make those assumptions because we don't have any evidence proving it. ठीक है? Okay. Um, right, but many people feel insecure about their bodies. Yes, Morvi, that is very true. And that is very true, right? A lot of people feel insecure about their bodies, but that is still not the diagnosis for a body image concern. Okay, let's come back to body image. Body image is our perception of ourselves, our perception of our bodies, right? Our perception of how we look to other people. Okay, now a body image issue is when we have a hard time um, aligning ourselves with the way our body looks, and we have a hard time accepting our body for what it is. Now, there is a difference here. Okay, please. I mean, I hear this a lot. A lot, I hear this. People will tell me that, okay, you know what? If you're having, if you're working out, etc., it means you have a body image issue. That is not the case. Working out, dieting, these are all ways to also take care of your physical body as well. Okay, so it doesn't always mean that, acha, this person is not eating because they have a body image issue. The person could not be eating because they are trying a new diet, because they don't like the food that they are being served. One tendency of people who understand mental health and even sometimes who don't understand mental health is to jump to conclusions कि अच्छा ये person ऐसा कर रहा है मतलब इस person को ये issue है. We need to break from that perspective as well. ठीक है? While we are normalizing mental health concerns, we can't generalize them. There's a difference. Please remember this. Okay? Okay. What is self-esteem? How you view yourself, how we think of ourselves, self respect, self worth, how we perceive ourselves. Interesting. Confidence on yourself. So then, so, okay, perception of ourselves. Treat ourselves with dignity. Seeing yourself from a specific point of view. Excellent. Very good. Very, very interesting thoughts here, right? My follow up question here would be, what influences our body image? What influences our self esteem? And why are these two so much connected with each other? What influences our body image? What influences our self esteem? And why are these two interconnected to such a large extent? Yes. Thank you, Morvi. Current standards of various industries, especially the Bollywood, Hollywood industry, which focuses so much of a hyper focus on zero figure and so much of a hyper focus on, the way a particular body is supposed to look. And this is not just for women, this is also for men, this is also for people identifying of all genders, right? All genders and sexes. It's not restricted to one particular, uh, um, you know, one particular aspect or one particular population. In general, there is so much of a focus on how an ideal body should look. This ideal body ignores the fact that as individuals, our bodies will change on a daily basis. As individuals, our bodies will serve us different functions. As individuals, there is no perfect body, right? We need to learn to take care of our body so that it can take care of us, not so that we can fit in with society. And this is very important, guys, because you're right now at that age where a lot of people will tell you, okay, you are okay. Like, see, I have experienced a lot of bullying pertaining to my weight. Okay, a lot of bullying pertaining to my weight, pertaining to my skin color, pertaining to a lot of different things, right? And for a long time, we resent ourselves for it. We don't like that we are getting bullied for this particular purpose. But we also need to understand that if a person is continuously bullying us, it has more to do with them than us. Because by bullying me, no one is benefiting. By body shaming me, no one is benefiting, right? So, when we're talking about body image, it's important for us to understand and accept the fact that we are all born with a certain body. If I don't like a particular feature of that body, I can work out, I can diet, I can eat more protein, I can eat more carbohydrates, whatever, to ensure that I reach my, you know, designated, or rather, I reach the standard that I would want to be in. But if I am doing that because society tells me that there's an ideal way, society is wrong. There isn't an ideal way to be. According to your height, your body weight needs to be a particular number. If that weight is more or less, then that causes medical, ailments. It causes physiological and mental ailments. In those situations, taking care of your body is required, right? It doesn't fall under a bad thing or a good thing or something which people are forcing you to do, correct? But if you're constantly comparing yourself to standards set by society, please remember society and the standards set by it are set by a particular amount of people, and these are not the majority. The very few people who can afford surgeries, who can afford Botox, who can afford, personal trainers, and who can reach the kind of body that they think is beautiful, is, desirable, right? That minority doesn't determine what our life is. Please remember that at the end of the day, we need to take care of our body because it takes care of us. Okay? And if we take care of our body, we'll be taking care of us as well. So, body image issues relate to inconsistencies or misalignment in how we perceive our body. When we think that there is something wrong with my body, I am too fat, I am too thin, I am too tall, I'm too short, and I want to change that. I want to change that to such an extent that I won't eat at all. I'll starve myself. I want to change it to such an extent that I'll eat a lot so I can gain some more weight. I want to change it to such an extent that I will, go to the gym every single day to build muscle. To such an extent that I am exhausted and I'm falling sick, but I'll still push myself to extremities. These are body image issues. Okay? Okay. Hmm. This is the second activity, my strength shield. We talked about the fact that we're going to be discussing about our identity, right? A lot of people restrict our identity and make us believe that we are just what we look like or we are just how we appear, but that is not the case. As individuals, we have a lot of skills, a lot of principles and morals that we value, right? So our identity is so much bigger than our appearance or our perception of ourselves. So what we will do now is we'll draw a strength shield. Again, this is an activity for your introspection. Please don't share it with us. Keep it with yourself. Okay? You need to draw a strength shield, which is Okay, please don't mind my drawing, okay? It's very bad. I'm telling you, abhi se hi. ठीक है, I think. Mm, 1 2 3, 1 2 3 4, यार. ओके, ऐसा कुछ. ठीक है. एक जगह पे you need to write a skill that you have. दूसरी जगह पे something that you value. Third is a challenge that you overcame. Fourth is a person that you admire. And fifth is a future goal. Okay. Now you might be noticing the fact that this is not a very theory laden lecture. It is not a theory laden lecture because I don't want it to be. Because I would like you to be able to understand yourself and your mind and your body by interacting with it. Okay. So please, everybody, spend 3 4 minutes on drawing the strength shield. Okay. A skill you have, something you value, a challenge you've overcome, a person you admire, and a future goal. When you're done, put it in the chat box, please. These are not sheets and exercises for you to just, do it and like forget about it. Okay, please keep coming back to these exercises because you need to keep remembering and keep reminding yourself that I'm so much more than what my body is. I'm so much more than my weaknesses. I'm so much more than my failures, than my strengths. I'm an amalgamation of all these things, and I am worth a lot more than that. Right? Okay, I can see a lot of responses. What was it like working on this activity? What was it like working on this activity? Relieving to see ourselves more than just a body. It's good for introspecting when we work out after a long time. Prithvi again. Okay, slightly different. That's interesting. Yes. Very good. I'm so glad that you guys interacted with this activity, right? Now we move on to a very important part, neurodiversity. Neurodiversity is the fact that our brain functions differently from person to person, and this affects our daily mental functioning. Neurodiversity is a point of view. Okay? Neurodivergence, neuroatypicality, these are major words we use to describe differences in the brain's functioning. Okay? When we talk about neurodiversity, we're trying to understand that differences in brain function will continue being there, and this is just an impact of a natural manifestation of our human body. It is not a problematic or a wrong thing. Okay, the fact that our brain will process information in different manners. No, Madhav, neurodiversity is also here a bit to do with the entire angle of a diagnosis, right? So when we're talking about neurodiversity, we don't mean critical thinking or divergent thinking. We mean more to do with the fact that there is a particular person and that person's brain has a different structure or performs differently than someone else. Therefore, that person has neurodivergence. Okay? Neurodiversity is a point of view which celebrates these differences and doesn't judge them. Okay? Can you all name some conditions or some, mental health concerns which would come under neurodiversity? ADHD, autism. Okay. Dyslexia. Excellent. What else? Dyscalculia, dysgraphia. Excellent. Bipolar. So, is it fair to say that everyone who has a mental health problem is neurodivergent? DPD. I don't know what DPD is. So, not everyone who has a mental health condition is neurodivergent, right? So how do we make the difference? Like how do we know that there is someone who is actually neurodivergent and someone who is experiencing a mental health concern but is not neurodivergent? Sense of maturity. Okay, dependent personality disorder. Mother, we'll come to autism, so we'll discuss it tabhi, okay? Okay. When we discuss about depression, when we talk about anxiety, when we talk about grief, even, we're not, we're trying to understand these as passing parts of human existence. We are saying that, not always Morvi, sorry. We're saying that as individuals and as human beings, depression, anxiety, grief, sadness, anger, these are parts of the human existence. These are not brain differences. These are not differences in our brain which impact how we function or how we interact with the environment around us. Okay? Please remember, not every mental health concern is a it falls under neurotypicality and neurodivergence, right? There are certain disorders or certain conditions which fall under neurodiversity even more, like autism, ADHD, dyscalculia, any learning disorder, Tourette's, OCD. These are aspects which are inbuilt in our system, and because we can't necessarily alter them, therefore they are seen more as sort of permanent. ठीक है? So these are not aspects which we can which impact us on a smaller basis, but they impact our daily functioning as well. Okay? Now, before we talk about um, this thing, before we talk about ADHD and autism in detail, can someone tell me? And let's talk about these myths and facts. Okay, the first one: people with ADHD can only pay attention for a few seconds. Myth or fact? Myth, 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 myth. Yes, myth. Myth because a lot of people have the hyperactivity sort of ADHD as well. So for them, they may be excited, they may be agitated, or like, very um, restless all the time. And ADHD varies from person to person. So someone who has a lesser intense form of ADHD may be able to focus for more time as well. Okay, when we are saying attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, we are not saying that the person cannot pay attention at all. We are saying that it varies from person to person, and it also matters on what stimulus they are interacting with. Are they engaged with the stimulus, etc.? Okay, all right. Second one: autistic people may experience sensory sensitivities to sounds, lights, textures, or smells. Fact: yes. A lot of people who have autism, who are on the spectrum, may experience different sensitivities to certain aspects of our environment, which they may be more um, alert to. So let's say that if you're, like, for example, there are certain textures also which people who have autism may not like, right? So a lot of times they'll be holding onto a glass, and they may notice that the glass is quite rough, or it's a little uncomfortable to hold, so they'll pick up another glass, right? Similarly, if there is a lot of noise around them, it overwhelms them, right? If the environment is too bright or too dark, it doesn't sit very easy with them, right? Okay. The third one: no more we no more we having sensory issues doesn't directly mean one has autism. It can mean a lot of things. Please remember, please remember this, okay? How do we know if someone has ADHD? You get a diagnosis. You consult a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist. You ask them to conduct tests on you. You ask them to conduct psychometric assessments. If you're experiencing attention issues, hyperactivity concerns, you discuss it with a therapist, and you gain some clarity on that. Right? Okay. Third one: ADHD is caused by bad parenting and lack of discipline. Myth. ADHD is not caused by bad parenting and lack of discipline. Please remember this. ADHD is a neurodivergent condition. What this means is one second. Sorry. It is not to do with the external stimuli. Uh, it is not to do with an external stimuli. It is something which is inbuilt, ingrained, and people develop it naturally. Right? Okay. Next, many people with ADHD can hyperfocus on activities they find highly interesting. Myth, fact, fact. Yes, hyperfocus होता है, hypervigilance, hyperattention on one specific part or one specific concept that they find very interesting and engaging. Okay, all autistic people have exceptional mathematical abilities. Myth, fact, myth. Not everyone has exceptional mathematical abilities. Okay, so there are a lot of people now, they see movies about people who have autism and they assume that this person has autism, it means that they must be super genius, but that is not always the case. There are sometimes people who have autism who have an average or above average range of abilities as well. It doesn't have to do anything with their intellect or their intelligence. Okay. Okay. Next one. Autism is a neurodevelopmental condition which affects communication, social interaction, and behavior in different ways. Myth, fact. Fact. Excellent. Excellent. So, autism is a neurodevelopmental condition, right? And what it does is it does impact the way people interact with their environment, with reference to talking to other people, communicating with other people, and engaging in behaviors with other people, right? Next, people with ADHD are simply lazy and need to try harder. Myth. Very, very, अरे भाई इतना बड़ा myth है. I feel really, really, my heart goes out to people who have ADHD because, yes, Prithvi got it. My heart goes out to people who have ADHD because a lot of them, what happens is when they have PTMs or when they are engaging in group projects, they are often told, you're just so lazy, man. You don't do any work at all. Why don't you do any work? It's so infuriating. The teachers will complain about them. But people won't understand that there is something underlying. There is something which is causing that concern, right? मेंटल हेल्थ को लेके इतना स्टिग्मा है कि कोई बात ही नहीं करता कि बच्चा ऐसा क्यों बिहेव कर रहा है. अगर बच्चे को अटेंशन पे करने में प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है, वो क्यों हो रहा है? बच्चा ऐसे ही टाइम पास के लिए तो थोड़ी करेगा ना, मतलब बच्चा वहां पे सीखने आया है. उसको अगर डिफिकल्टी हो रही है, उसके मार्क्स कम आ रहे हैं, उसको यू नो सिर्फ बैठने में, शांति से बैठने में थोड़ा डिफिकल्टी हो रहा है, वो क्यों हो रहा है वो, राइट? Yes, Twisha, people can do work and still have ADHD. I have a lot of my friends have ADHD as well, and I worked with a lot of clients also who have ADHD. They are working professionals who are able to manage their ADHD. Okay, just because you have ADHD doesn't mean you can't work. It just means that you may need to make adjustments in your environment to accommodate for the ADHD. Okay, all right. Every autistic person is unique, may have different strengths, challenges, and support needs. Myth, fact. Fact. Very good, right? Everyone's experience of autism is different because there isn't any, like, just because a person has, let's say that there is A and B. A may experience a lot of sensitivity towards lights and smells. B may not experience that. B may have a difficulty with communication and socializing a lot more, right? So everyone has a different, firstly, intensity and a different way of, like, how the symptomology shows, right? Okay. Ninth one. Vaccines cause autism. Do vaccines cause autism? Myth. 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 Prithvi, we will not be talking about PTSD because, and I would really encourage you all to not talk about or not read about PTSD until you're in your undergrad, or at least in your, till you're in your undergrad, because PTSD is not something which you can wrap around your mind very easily. It's a very complicated mental health condition. It requires a lot of sensitivity to even understand why it happens, right? So, yes, vaccines do not cause autism. Please remember this. Vaccines do not cause autism. Autism is a neurodevelopmental condition which is inborn, right? राइट इरम पीटीएसडी ना 12th सिलेबस पे सिर्फ नाम के लिए होता है, मतलब टू बी ऑनेस्ट दे जस्ट डिस्कस अ लिटिल बिट ऑफ द इंट्रोडक्शन, but if you look at PTSD, it's not, it's like from my personal experience, PTSD is such a difficult condition to work with because it really shatters the way a person lives their life and it's heartbreaking, right? So a lot of people read up about a lot of these concerns and a lot of these mental health conditions etc out of interest, and that's okay. बट यू नीड टू हैव दैट सेंसिटिविटी एज वेल। तो अगर आप पढ़ रहे हो कि अच्छा हॉबी जैसे पढ़ रहे हो या अच्छा क्या ही कर लेंगे पढ़ के, देन पीटीएसडी विल नॉट बी एन इजी रीड फॉर यू। इट विल रिक्वायर यू टू बी पे अटेंशन एंड हैव इमोशनल यू नो respect for the concerns going on. It took you a month to understand it, Madhav. Okay. Autism to be passed on. Um, Morvi, why do people think autism causes vaccine causes autism? Because people don't have a proper distinction, na? People don't have a proper understanding of what causes autism. So they assume कि अच्छा ये बंदे ने वैक्सीन लिया होगा इसलिए उसको autism हुआ होगा. But that's not the case, right? Is it possible for autism to be passed on to the to the future generation by the parent? Aradhya, there is if I'm not mistaken, hereditary का भी एक angle है. There is an angle of nurture versus nature over here. You can get it from your parent, but again, not a lot of conclusive evidence over there, right? Last one, ADHD affects executive functioning like planning, organization, impulse control, and working memory. Myth, fact? Fact. Excellent. That is basically what ADHD is, right? It affects our executive functioning, it impacts the way we plan. So, we were talking about um, autism and ADHD. है ना? We talked about ADHD. Now let's talk about autism. We'll do a quick little video first. Okay, we're talking about neurodiversity. Hey again. Hi again. Right, right. Okay, one second. Let me see. Last हम discuss कर रहे थे ADHD के बारे में. Okay. Great. Neurodiversity. Okay. So, ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which is a neurodevelopmental concern which results from differences in the brain growth and nerve connections. These differences affect our emotions, our behavior, our attention, executive functioning, as well as working memory and decision making. Please remember, there are two main types of ADHD, and then there is the third one, which is combined. Inattentive ADHD refers to major concerns to do with attention capacity. Attention span बहुत कम होता है. It's difficult to pay attention to multiple stimuli at the same time. It's difficult to focus on one thing at the same time. You get distracted very easily. You get overwhelmed very easily. Then there is the hyperactive or the impulsive kind, where sitting still is very difficult. You feel restless, you feel agitated, you feel uncomfortable when you're sitting still or not doing something, right? Or if you're experiencing extreme stress, your first response is often an impulsive or a hyperactive one. Okay, and then there is combined, where you have traits of hyperactivity and inattention. Okay, now when I was telling you all about how do we understand if a person has ADHD, this is where the DSM-5 comes in. This is where clinical criteria come in. Okay, we will all have concerns with attention, but that doesn't mean we have ADHD. Okay, you will all have days when you're tired and you're unable to focus on something and you're getting overwhelmed by lots of different stimuli. That doesn't mean you have ADHD. Okay, it means you're a human being and you have a limited attention span like all the other human beings in the world. Right? Now, symptoms, several symptoms before the age of 12. This is extremely important for us to be able to categorize or define something as ADHD. Right? These symptoms are present before the age of 12. They have been persisting for 6 months or longer, and they are evident in at least two social settings. अगर आपको अटेंशन का प्रॉब्लम सिर्फ घर पे हो रहा है, कहीं और नहीं हो रहा है, that does not mean that you have ADHD. If you have experiences of attention concerns, hyperactivity concerns at home with your friends, in school, with interacting with other people, in a public setup, etc., then we can check for ADHD. So, what we are trying to say is these symptoms should cause social, academic, or occupational dysfunctioning, problems in functioning across two settings at least. Okay. So if you come to a doctor and you tell them that you know what, I just can't study at home, they won't say कि you have ADHD. They'll say कि okay, maybe you are unable to study in the home का environment because home पे हम लोग rest लेते हैं. Correct. So if you come to them and tell them कि मुझे मुश्किल होती है पढ़ाई करने में, घर में भी, स्कूल में भी, ट्यूशंस में भी मुझे होती ही नहीं है, then they may check for other symptoms of ADHD as well. Right? Okay. Now before we discuss autism, let's watch one last video for this class. Right? Have I shared my screen? Have I shared my audio? कैसे करते हैं यार? रुक जाओ एक second. Even when things are going our way, still we feel like crying. Yes, Prithvi, that is often something which a lot of people experience, right? Uh, one second, guys. Is brain rot similar to ADHD? No, it isn't, Prithvi. Brain rot is a recent terminology. It is not the same as a diagnosable criteria based disorder which impacts our daily functioning. Brain rot is a state of being. It is not, a continuous, it's not a disorder basically. It's a state. Why do we cry out of happiness? Because we are experiencing overwhelming joy. Why does, for some people, having music in the background help focus or study better? Because you're using different senses, and in that process, it's more easier for you to be able to study. Can you
Lack of money spent on acquiring customers.
can you
With the
hear?
Zoho Expense and Zoho CRM integration, start quantifying your business travel returns. Track every expense related to client meetings, from cab rides.
When we examine 100 random teenagers, we would find that while they all look different, their minds work in very similar ways. One or two, however, have minds that are atypical in a particular way. They could be diagnosed with autism. This happens to boys 4 times as much, perhaps because diagnosing them is easier. Children and adults who are considered autistic experience the world differently because they were born with various degrees of neuroatypical traits. Most autistic children have more refined senses and share a deep desire to bring logic into their surroundings. Some seek repetitive behaviors that follow specific patterns, and many appear to be asocial and avoid eye contact. Autism is not a disease and therefore cannot be cured. Since all our brains are different and there is an endless range of nuances in their architecture, autism is defined as a spectrum. On one side of the spectrum is high-functioning autism, also known as Asperger's syndrome. These children are highly intelligent and have extreme abilities and interest in specific areas. In the middle are those with average intelligence and some problems learning new things in school. On the far end of the spectrum are children with severe learning disabilities who may require support in their daily lives. Timo, a young boy, can help us understand how living with a neurodivergent mind can be. His mum noticed early on that her boy would avoid eye contact and that he would often become upset if she hugged him. He never returned smiles, and engaging him in play with friends often ended in a tantrum. His mother suspected something to be wrong when Timo still wasn't speaking more than 2 or 3 words at a time, even after turning 4 years old. She sought help, and Timo was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, or ASD for short. Timo has an atypical perception. When reading books or watching movies, Timo's brain picks up and organizes the information differently. While his neurotypical peers categorize things and form schemas, for example, they identify everything with 4 legs that barks as a dog, for Timo, each type of dog is unique and categorized in Timo's mind individually. His attention to detail and inability to generalize makes Timo more objective in his perception of the world and less prone to a framing bias. However, it also makes all sorts of new experiences incredibly complex, which is why he loves to follow a rigid daily routine to limit his sensory input. Timo is highly sensitive. His brain amplifies whatever input it perceives. He hears everything and has a heightened sense of touch. However, this superpower makes situations where many people speak simultaneously very challenging. Timo hears everyone but understands nothing. The sensitivity to touch makes eating an intense experience. If a texture or flavor is too much to handle, Timo won't eat it. Also, walking barefoot on wet grass or playing in dirt overwhelms his brain. He has a fascination with logic. Timo naturally looks for patterns that bring logic into this world. Sometimes he also tries to bring order into his own behavior and ways of moving his body. When structured patterns are broken, he gets upset. It freaks him out when someone counts to 8 but doesn't continue to 10. Doctors call it an obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD. Timo experiences social disconnection. He has trouble connecting with others because social settings overwhelm his sensitivity and desire for order. Because human emotions are incredibly complex and don't follow a set predictable pattern, Timo often finds himself misreading situations and upsetting people around him. As a consequence, he avoids people and rarely makes eye contact, which doesn't matter that much to him, since most of the things other people talk about are illogical, irrelevant, and boring anyway. For 4 years, his mother had him treated by a therapist who would show him images of faces to help him learn to identify feelings. This meant he got better at identifying facial expressions and corresponding emotions. However, personally, he is still not very interested in reading faces or establishing new social contacts. He has 2 friends who share the same interests and couldn't wish for more. Since Timo's autism is not an illness we can treat, but rather a different way of him experiencing the world, the question remains whether we should try to change him through therapy or accept him for who he is. So, what do you think? Should we treat children with autism with therapy or celebrate them for who they are? Or perhaps do both? Maybe it's not their atypical minds, but our stereotypical way of looking at them that needs correction. To get a 3-dimensional glimpse of how an autistic girl experiences her own surprise birthday party, or to download this video without background music, check the descriptions below or visit sproutschools.com.
Okay, so what's autism? What is autism? Condition that makes it harder to socialize. That is one part of it. Yes, but autism spectrum disorder is a lot more than just socializing part, right? It's characterized by communication challenges, restricted repetitive behavioral patterns as well. A lot of the times, OCD and yes, Samira, it's due to stereotypes, perceiving the world differently from others. Yes, a lot of the times OCD gets misdiagnosed or rather ASD gets misdiagnosed as OCD because there are lots of overlaps. But the social interaction and communication challenge is one of the major differences between OCD and ASD. Okay. So there is intellectual concerns, language concerns, social motor abilities. People, they interact, learn, act, think, and communicate differently. Please remember this, right? We're not saying that people who have autism do not think, do not interact, do not learn, do not communicate, do not interact. We're saying that they think, learn, act, communicate, and interact differently. So it's not like they are uninterested in socializing. It's just that they take more time to open up. It's just that they take more time to understand what kind of social interaction they want to be a part of, right? Symptoms need to be present in the early developmental ages, which is again before the age of 12, if I'm not mistaken. But they may manifest later on until social demands exceed limited capacities. Now, a lot of people also get diagnosed in adulthood with ASD, majorly because of the fact that symptoms don't show themselves until a person is extremely stressed out, which is similarly what happens with ADHD as well. For a very long time, we are able to manage and work through things until we reach a tipping point, and there is a lot of pressure, and we don't have the capacity to deal with that sort of pressure, and hence our symptomology shows up more frequently, shows up more strongly, right? This is where we engage, this is where people get diagnosed with ASD, ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, etc. Okay. Okay. So that is all about today's content for the lecture, okay, for the session. But I would like to now talk about the next step in our project, right? But before we get to that, any questions on what we covered in today's session? Can you give rundown about Morbi? I have given a rundown already, and what we're doing right now is going through it step by step. What about OCD, Jia? OCD is not part of our syllabus. It's not part of something we'll be covering in today's session or in this internship as a whole, because OCD, a lot of people have a different understanding of it. And it is not just कि अच्छा मैंने इसको हाथ लगाया मैं हाथ साफ कर लेता हूँ 3 बार हाथ साफ कर लेता हूँ 4 बार हाथ साफ कर लेता हूँ. It's much more complicated than that. We will not be touching on disorders. Please understand, the reason I touched on neurodiversity was because it is something which is closer to your age range and closer to your understanding of mental health as well, right? So OCD, PTSD, not things we'll be covering in this internship. Okay. Any questions about the content we covered today? Sean Murphy is a good example. Sheldon is a good example of OCD. Yes, Prithvi. I think someone being autistic good. It's not a good or bad thing. So it's a condition and people live through it. People learn to adjust and adapt, right? So we can't add judgment to a mental health condition or a mental health disorder or a neurodivergent disorder for that matter. Does autism directly affect academics? Sometimes. When will the recording for 2 be sent? Everyone who's asking about recordings and all that, Shubham will answer those questions later, okay? There was some psychologist who framed that everyone has a mental disorder. It's just the person who is seeing it from a different lens. Madhav, I don't agree with that sentence. Mental disorders have a clinical criteria behind them. There is a lot more detail pertaining to uh, Down syndrome. Prithvi, we won't be studying about Down syndrome either. Um, I will talk about the assignments here, right? But Madhav, I don't think everybody on the world has a mental health disorder. I think people have a mental health. Sometimes they experience concerns in their mental health and their condition. These conditions may be intense and cause disorders or be termed as disorders or just be passing mental health conditions. Both of these are important, right? Lavanch, autism does directly, not directly affect academics, but it does impact it because again, right, sometimes people, there are super genius people who have autism, who are extremely intellectual, extremely smart with one particular subject. So it's difficult to even understand if autism directly affects academics, because many of these people get through, right? So they'll either be like super smart, or they'll be above average, and they'll be able to lead through the academics part properly, right? Can we use AI for our assignment? Tanvi, I think I mean, I'm not even going to answer that question. Please don't use AI for your assignments. If I wanted you all to use AI for your assignments, I would not have given you all the assignment at all. Please don't use AI for your assignments. I may not. Can parenting affect autistic person positively? Definitely, Madhav. Yes. I may not get a chance to single-handedly go through all your assignments. No, Prithvi. I'm coming to the second part of the assignment. I may not single-handedly be able to go to all your assignments, but please, I thoroughly encourage you, if you are genuinely interested in psychology, please, please don't use AI for your assignment. Up research karo, take the time you require. Please interact with people, learn from real life experiences. AI तो रहेगा guys. ठीक है? Please use your creativity, use your potential. Don't let it fade away because of AI. Okay? Okay. Now, first step was picking a topic. You all have picked a topic. Second step was conducting a literature review. You all have conducted the literature review. The third step is forming a questionnaire. This questionnaire is not a quantitative questionnaire. I am not asking you to survey 100 people. I am asking you to interview 5 people. For example, let's say that the topic I've chosen is gender. For example, ठीक है? I want to understand, how do people of different sexes perceive feminism? How do they perceive gender identity, etc. ठीक है? So I won't go to these 5 people and ask them stuff like, do you agree with misogyny? Do you agree with patriarchy? I'll ask them things like, what are your opinions about this perspective? How do you believe about, how do you think about this perspective? What do you, what kind of a way do you engage with this perspective, etc. We're not asking yes or no questions. We're asking open-ended questions. ठीक है? So if I want to understand a person's point of view about social media, I won't ask them, how do you use social media? I'll ask them something like, what is your engagement with social media like? What do you use social media for? Right? Stuff like that. Mm. Right? So please remember, this, the third step is forming the questionnaire. You just need to compose 5 qualitative questions. Qualitative questions refers to questions which are open ended and which will provide you with detailed answers. How was your day? Is this a qualitative question? How was your day is not a qualitative question. Was your day good? Is this a qualitative question? So then how was your day would be a qualitative question, no? How was your day? If the person says, my day was good, that's it. That's a different thing, na? But आप question तो open ended से frame कर रहे हो, right? Okay. Um, what is your opinion about social media? Is this a qualitative question? Yes, excellent. Do you like social media? Is this a qualitative question? No. Correct. So what, how, why? Let's avoid why. What, how, when? All these are qualitative questions. Okay. So yes, very good, Morvi. WH questions. Excellent. Simply stated, I would like you all to curate 5 questions, 5 qualitative questions, 5 qualitative questions which have open ended answers. Stuff. pertaining to your topic. अभी ऐसा नहीं है कि अगर आपने सोशल मीडिया के बारे में चूज किया है एज योर टॉपिक, यू गो एंड आस्क समवन अबाउट देयर ओपिनियंस अबाउट जेंडर. 5 qualitative questions about the chosen topic. Does this make sense? Is this clear? Okay. If you have not completed the first and second step so far, please note we are 10 days within the internship. Okay? Please pick up the pace thoda sa because this is an internship and project which I need you all to do at the same pace as we are learning so we can solve and interact about the project on a daily, on a weekly basis at least, right? The first step is picking a topic from the list of topics shared with you. The second step is literature review. 5 articles, research articles, summarize करके रख देना है बस. The third step is forming the questionnaire. Yes, Jia, you have to write the response of the people you interview. But firstly, first step के लिए आप just questionnaire form कर लो. 5 qualitative. Tisha, I have already shared the topics through Shubham. You can share it again. 5 qualitative questions. Yes, Mathli. 5 qualitative open-ended questions. That's it. Just frame the questions and keep them. Then we'll go to the next step. Let's go at this step by step, guys. Okay? I don't want you all to do every single thing in one go because that gets overwhelming. So at least step by step up karo. Right? So I would like to believe that abhi tak majority of y'all have completed review of literature at least because we're already 10 days in. The third step is forming the questionnaire, qualitative questionnaire. That's it. Right? So आप लोग 5 questions formulate करो. Next session में if you have any doubts about that, we'll address them. Okay, that is all for today, guys. I will see you all on Thursday. Okay, how are you feeling? How was today's class? It was great, amazing, very good, excellent, interesting. Um, see this. One second, Iram. When it comes to like the deadline, right? That is why I'm telling you all to take it step by step because you at least get the momentum going. So don't wait till the last minute is what I would suggest. Up step by step start karo. By this week, have the questionnaire ready. So then you can proceed to the next step of asking people and interviewing people, right? So at least first of all, आप questions ready रख रखो. उसके बाद हम discuss कर लेंगे. ठीक है? Okay, all right. Thank you so much, everyone. Shubham, you can take it from here, I think.
Yes. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. And even I was listening to class. There was few things like I was able to recall the amygdala part, the cerebellum part. It's been so long for me
Yep,
as
it
well.
has. It has been long.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, guys. Thank you for joining. And thank you, Sarah.
Thank you
And
so
very good night to
much.
everyone. Have a good
Bye
day. Have a
bye.
good night, everyone.
Take care.
Bye
Bye.
bye.